Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and talk about a deeply uncomfortable, universally human feeling. I know you know the exact one I'm talking about. It's that feeling of walking into a room late and being absolutely 100% convinced that everyone is judging your every single flaw. It's that heavy, sudden weight telling you, yep, all eyes are locked directly on me. But what if I told you the stage you feel like you're standing on doesn't actually exist at all? Just picture the last time this happened to you. Imagine walking into a super quiet meeting, or maybe a crowded classroom, and you're like 5 minutes late. You're slightly out of breath from rushing. You pull open the door, and in your mind, every head turns in slow motion. You're convinced every single eye is zeroing in on that fresh coffee stain on your sleeve. You feel like everyone is actively judging your messy hair, your awkward posture, and your obvious panic. It literally feels like you just stepped onto a stage under a blinding neon spotlight, right? But this right here perfectly highlights the massive disconnect between our internal anxiety and the external reality. Think about the contrast. What you believe happened is that the entire room paused their lives to record your awkward movements and mentally critique your wardrobe. But the dry, honestly boring reality, maybe two people briefly glanced up from their phones. One was just checking the door because they expected a friend, and the other forgot you even walked in before you could even find a seat. Nobody saw the stain. Literally nobody cared. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called the spotlight effect. It's that overwhelming, nagging belief that you are being noticed, scrutinized, and judged way, way more than you actually are. And honestly, one of the most liberating realizations you can have is that this spotlight, it's entirely fake. Because once you accept that, you realize the exhausting stage you've been performing on just doesn't exist either. So, to figure out why our brains torture us like this, let's look at a brilliantly simple and frankly hilarious experiment from Cornell University. The researchers wanted to test exactly how much people actually notice about us in the real world, and they decided the best way to do it was by using a highly embarrassing piece of clothing. Here's how it went down. They asked university students to put on a t-shirt featuring a giant, incredibly cheesy photo of the singer Barry Manilow right on the front. Then, they had to walk into a room completely full of their peers, sit down in that awkward silence for just a moment, and then stand back up and leave. I mean, just imagine the sheer horror of having to do that in front of a room full of college students. When these deeply embarrassed students finally escaped the room, breathing a massive sigh of relief, the researchers asked them a very simple question. How many people in there do you think noticed your shirt? The students were absolutely certain that at least half the room, a solid 50% of their peers, had noticed and judged their humiliating Barry Manilow shirt. But here is the fascinating reality about that audience. When the researchers actually went in and asked the room what they saw, fewer than 25% even remembered seeing the shirt. That means the vast majority of people were completely oblivious to this deeply embarrassing moment. In fact, some people in the room didn't even remember a person walking through the door at all. That blinding spotlight was entirely generated inside the students' own heads. Why does this happen? Well, your brain kind of actively lies to you through a process called anchoring. Look, you are the undisputed star of your own movie, right? You experience the entire world from one intensely vivid perspective, yours. You feel your own heart racing, you notice every tiny blemish in the mirror, and because your self-awareness is so loud to you, you incorrectly assume that same intensity must be radiating outward for everyone else to see. Think about a mundane scenario, like an awkward elevator ride with a stranger. You're standing there, agonizing internally, sweating over thoughts like, did I send that email? Is my hair doing that weird thing? Are my shoes squeaking? Meanwhile, the stranger right next to you, they're staring blankly at the doors, thinking, man, what am I going to have for lunch? In their movie, you're just background scenery. They are completely absorbed in their own complex thoughts, exactly like you are in yours. Which begs the question, why are our brains wired to do this? Well, this overwhelming anxiety isn't just a quirk of modern life. It's literally ancient, hardwired survival software. For the vast majority of human history, we evolved in close-knit tribes of maybe 150 people. Back then, your reputation was a literal survival tool. If you stood out in a bad way or seemed strange to the group, you could get pushed away from the fire. And being isolated back then meant you could actually die. But here's the massive glitch in our system today. You don't live in a tribe of 150 people anymore. You live in a massive, sprawling world of 8 billion people. You probably pass more strangers in a single week of commuting than your ancient ancestors met in their entire lives. But your brain hasn't caught up. Its internal alarm bells are still screaming that everyone is watching and judging because it falsely believes your physical survival depends on it.
This intense evolutionary pressure creates another fascinating psychological hurdle we call the illusion of transparency. It's that terrible, nagging belief that your internal, deeply hidden emotions are somehow completely visible on your face to everyone else. It's what makes you falsely believe the audience can literally see your heart pounding through your chest during a presentation, or that everyone at a party can tell exactly how out of place you feel.
But researchers discovered something genuinely incredible about this. Simply knowing this illusion exists, just being consciously aware that people cannot actually read your anxiety, reduces the anxiety itself. The very knowledge that your internal state is opaque and not transparent like glass is practically a secret weapon. In follow-up studies, they took people who were about to give a super stressful public speech and just took a moment to explain this illusion of transparency to them. The results? Amazing. These speakers not only felt significantly less anxious on stage, but the audience actually rated them as more confident and more compelling. Why? Because they suddenly realized they didn't have to waste all their mental energy trying to mask their nervousness. They were free to just deliver their message. Now, if you're still sitting there worrying that making a tiny public mistake is going to ruin your image forever, let me introduce you to the pratfall effect. Science actually proves that making a mistake, like spilling a cup of coffee or briefly dropping your notes, makes highly competent people significantly more likable to an audience. It all comes down to this. The statue of perfection might look really impressive from a distance, but it creates immense emotional distance. We just can't connect with a flawless, rigid statue. On the flip side, the human flaw, the spilled coffee, the stumbled word, the slightly messy hair, that sends a powerful instant signal that you're a real, vulnerable human being, not just a rehearsed robot. Flaws create genuine connection. Reflect on your own life for a second. Think about every single hand you didn't raise in a crowded meeting, every fascinating conversation you backed out of at a networking event, every creative risk you didn't take. You were managing a phantom audience. You were trying to protect yourself from a critical crowd that was actually way too busy worrying about their own awkwardness to even notice yours. The beautifully liberating truth behind all this research is just this. Once you fully realize the spotlight isn't real, you're finally free. You are entirely free to wear that bold shirt you actually like. Free to ask the so-called stupid question that everyone else is probably wondering about anyway. You can take big, messy risks without that paralyzing fear of public failure, because the public is vastly smaller and way less interested than your brain insists they are. It's time to step off the imaginary stage, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to just be a person. You can completely free yourself from that ancient survival software that just doesn't serve you anymore in this massive, modern world. Stop performing for a tribe that isn't even watching. If this explainer helped you see the human condition a bit differently and maybe took a little bit of weight off your shoulders today, hit that subscribe button and join our tribe here at Universe 25. We love uncovering these fascinating glitches in our modern lives, and honestly, we're really just getting started. So I'll leave you with this final, empowering thought to carry with you into the rest of your day, your next meeting, or whatever social event you have coming up. What are you going to do now that the audience is gone?